Right. Hi, Mike Halpert. Thank you so much for joining me and being one of my guests on the Resilient Entrepreneur Show.
Oh, happy to be here, Kate. Thank you so much.
So, you're the founder of Veer Coaching and been an entrepreneur almost 3 years now, right? So, tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, sure. So being a mental performance coach, I was able to be like, hey, what do athletes really need? Like, what's there at the baseline? And the beginning thing was like, what if we get their eyes to work together? What if we kind of did that in sync? Like, not doing too much at once. And so we have a VR app and the Oculus headset that athletes can go through this. They can do it before practice. They can do it kind of in between and do it before the game and kind of have this application that like, hey, if the eyes work together, what does that do for our confidence, right? What does that do for tracking the ball in space, being a soccer goalie, right? Like any of these things, right? Like, why don't we just start there?
Love. So, it's using virtual reality to make it fun for kids, but also focusing on like getting them to be focused. And, we talked out before this about my daughter being a soccer player and a goalie, and she says sometimes she like finds her mind drifting and like she's not focused when the ball's on the other end of the field, and then like all of a sudden it's right up in front of her and like she's got to be on, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's really funny, when I was working with Duke football players, like, one guy was like, "Wait, we don't do this. We don't, like, get our eyes ready." Right? Like, we get our muscles ready, get all this stuff, but, like, "Oh, we gotta be, like, ready, warmed up,
Ooh,
good to go." And you're right, for a goalie, right? Like, the ball's on the other side of the pitch, and all of a sudden, like, you have to make that play.
yeah.
It's cool you brought up goalies. Yeah, we'll be in Austin, next month. Casey Murphy has a goalkeeper soccer camp. So next month we'll be there with headsets on the field, having players like run through drills and then run through some session and then continue going. Cause like for goalies, for sure. I mean, goalies are the last line defense. When you talk about pressure and stress and needing to have confidence, like goalies across all sports, right? Like all of them, where there's a goalie, like you need to be able to perform in that moment. Cause again, it comes to you.
I love that. Yeah, the stress and the pressure we've been talking about with my daughter, and so we'll continue to have those conversations. I'm interested in your goalie program, but also like you said, they stretch their muscles, they warm up for cardio, they get prepared with their physical body, but not necessarily the training with their.
Yeah, and we talk about it that, like, the game is so mental, the game is so important, and, like, we're just carving in, like, "Hey, let's do this 30-second trainer. Hey, let's do 5 minutes of training at the end of practice." Like, let's carve out just, like, the littlest amount of time just to kind of enter this space, which is still a hard thing to do, right? Because we've so been one of my best friends was a college quarterback, our college he's like, "Mike, if we had 5 more minutes, coach would want us to lift." Right? Like, we have 5 more minutes, like, we're lifting. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're getting 1 more rep in. Like, what are you talking about? So, it's a really interesting space to be like, "Hey, athletes don't have a lot of time, and we wanna take a little bit."
I like that a lot. All right. So I want to get to know your business a little bit better. So this is the short answer section.
Yeah.
Who is or was the first hire in your business?
So, it's really interesting. I've yet to hire anybody full-time. I worked with Amanda Stockwell and the Seed List, and I had several paid interns, this summer. So I think that was, like, a really cool thing. It was students from NC State and Duke, and I've also had some others come in through UNC. So I think being in this area, it's a really cool opportunity. And we'll look to actually make the first full-time hire in the next couple of weeks. So that's actually kind of really exciting. But what I've learned from that is having somebody full-time is different, right? Having somebody who can really buy in, and other startups that I've worked with, having people who can run sales alongside of me, right? People, a full-time person doing the marketing, like people can really own that. It's incredible to see what happens when you had a fractional piece of time. But
Yeah.
when you have that full time, you get really a good amount of access. It's incredible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that you kind of led into like one of my other questions is like, do you hire full time or contractors? Do you outsource projects or fractional? And I'm in the space of fractional, of course. And sometimes when you're small and you're still getting started in that upward trend, like fractional or outsourced is all you
Oh,
need, right? Like
yeah.
I use a contractor outsourced for my social media and my marketing for one of my companies. Like I don't need a full time US based employee that I have to be responsible for to just get a little bit of marketing out there.
And I think sometimes too, as well, right? Like as founder and entrepreneur and any of that stuff, where like, we need it done now. It's like, well, what needs to be done now? Because if when it's fractional, it doesn't need to be done now. It needs to be done when that person has time. And I think there's that reframing, which is also really nice, right? Because everything can't be a fire because you're the only one that can put out the fire. So I
Right.
think it's really nice to be like, oh, again, you also have to see it before it happens, right? I talked about this with a coach I worked with of like, what's the ability to see the ripple before the stone falls in the water, right? Because like, hey, this is going to happen, so I'm going to need help here at a point.
Yeah. That's good imagery, the ripple before the stone hits. But also like as an founder and entrepreneur, like you do it all for so long that you then have to figure out at what point do I trust someone else that I can delegate, and who do I need to delegate to, and who is that first hire. And I ask all the entrepreneurs, because that's interesting, because sometimes it's sales and marketing, or it's finance is the other one. Like I don't do good with bookkeeping and my taxes, so a CPA, was the first hire that I made. But it doesn't need to be traditional hiring either. Um, my next question is about software. So, what is the one software tool that you cannot live without?
I personally love HubSpot. When I ran sales for Grit, that all train wheelchair company, we'll get to that at a point. HubSpot is amazing. Cambridge, Mass based. I mean, it's really funny for me because follow up and outreach is super important in sales. That's kind of been my background, and it can't fall through the cracks. I mean, it can't. And one of my favorite things is like, oh, I have a task, on Tuesday to call Kate. And before I even get to that task on Tuesday, Kate called me and I was like, yes, right? Like that was right. Like the cadence that I had set up is really important. And I think it's really easy. Any contact I get, like if we were at an event, I would take down your information, take a screenshot of it so then it lives in my phone, reach out to you, and then put it in HubSpot for when I need to follow up. Because meeting at a networking event, like Raleigh Durham Startup Week or any of that, like it'll fall through the cracks. And the amount of things like it can't.
Yes. I think follow up is the key. There's so much good energy. You spend so much time networking or doing outreach or making that first connection. And then if you fail to do the follow up or the action item or the remember and touch base in 30 days or 60 days, the sales don't happen, right? If
Well,
you don't follow through.
and as a founder, right, like we don't know where it'll go. Tom Colopy, who has like T Bar, which is like a really good thing, like AI with sales. He talks about it as like, Mike, you have lots of good like spider webs, right? Like you don't know, like if you think about Spider-Man, right? There's just like you don't know what's gonna hold you yet. You don't know where you're gonna fly from. And
Yeah.
so like it's really good to have all those follow-ups and all those things somewhere because you don't know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like it's wild.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know where your next real opportunity is going to come from and where that conversation is going to lead to. It could be a referral. It could be they become the customer. It could be they become a partner. It could take 3, 6, 9, 12 months before it lands, right? But that's why you
Absolutely.
need it to be documented and not just living up here, because we're trying to hold too much information up here, right?
Yeah, and unless you do there, I mean, right? And that's why I talk about it, right? Like having a CRM that I trust, rely on, and things can live there, the more you can put somewhere else, the better, right? Like lots of people live by their Google calendars, right? Lots of people live by sending the Calendly links or anything like that. But like the less that's in your brain, the more, and I think the more space there is for a thing you don't know will come up, and the ability to problem solve again, right? The ripples before, right? You need to see the things. And if you're just trying to see what's in front of you, like you're never going to actually pull back and see the forest.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then VR and AR was really, really hot, only to be foreshadowed by AI at this point, but still huge. I'm really into, and I haven't used them yet, but those like virtual reality glasses that are using AI and virtual augmented reality, and you're like walking around and like reading text messages, and it's doing like real-time research about Mike's LinkedIn and your background and finding everything it can about all your social media and online digital presence at the same time, so that I'm in a networking conversation and I know all this information about you.
Yeah.
But what is your favorite AI tool? Are you into AI as much as you're into VR?
So I think it's an interesting thing. Because being in VR, right? I'm in VR because that's the best space to have this set up. So, years ago when we had vision training and we had a device, it was on a computer that need to be connected to internet, that you needed specific hand things being sent to you. So the reason we're actually in VR is because it takes away having to send somebody the computer and the Wi-Fi. And like, this is not, you don't need to be on Wi-Fi for what we're doing. That's incredible. You just need to be on Wi-Fi to download the app and get updates. But the fact that you can literally go anywhere, right? That your daughter can do this in the car before going out to the pitch, that's huge
In
accessible.
the field, not in a clinic, right?
Coach Rob Hagee has it in the dugout for a baseball tournament. Right, like, so that's where we're using it, is actually like accessibility. What I don't want is actually that overload. For me, yes, I mean, like, using Chat GPT is like, as a founder, right? Just like to bounce ideas off of, right? Like, hey, you've been through this. What's the thing that I'm missing? Right? When I had this conversation, and I really like Chris Voss's kind of stuff of Never Split the Difference, like, what am I missing here? And what's cool, when I've like hired sales team in the past, like, I'll teach them how I do sales, and then I'll give them a book about it, which is great because they've now been like, oh, a month in, this is why Mike had us do this. This is why, like, I only really want to use ChatGPT and these kinds of tools as a plus, not as the first, because it's almost too much. And you can think about all the technology of, like, if you have a bottle of water, you're shaking it up, and like, it's an overload. If you go to it as like hey, before I send this, is this right? Does this read well? Like, what's misunderstood here, right? Because you have to send off so many emails. You're like, wait, real quick, before I do this, like, I kind of like to use it as like spell check, right? Which dates me a bit, right? But like, when we used to do stuff in Microsoft Word, before we did anything, we were like, spell check. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I spelled these 6 words wrong,
Well,
right? Like,
and even like the tone and the implication of like, how can I say this more concisely? Because, I can be verbose. I know that's hard for you to believe, but like, it will be like, okay, you said this in 17 sentences instead of 3. Like, you could have
right,
gotten your main point across quicker, because people
right.
don't have the attention span anymore.
But there's also, like, I can talk about baseball and I can talk about stats with baseball, but if you don't know anything about baseball, it's like, cool, this person got more hits and got out less. Do you know that? If you don't know baseball, you're like, oh, this app helped.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
that, I used it last week for that, right? Because it was like, oh, how do you explain this to somebody who knows nothing about baseball?
Right. In the layman terms. All right. Well, now I want to get into the storytelling, like the fun part of it. So we're going to start with the easy ball, right? Success story. So I know you've been a business owner and entrepreneur for a few years now. What is your proudest achievement as a business owner, and how did it happen?
This was really cool. It's actually right before I recorded a podcast like a couple weeks ago. Maya Burgess, she was interning with a friend of mine here at American Underground. Amaya is left fielder for Duke softball. Her and I met a year ago sitting watching Duke volleyball games, and we just became friends because she runs this incredible program called the Blue Crew that's getting athletes and getting people to women's sporting events at Duke. So just like a really cool thing of like bringing more crowd, right? And I was like, hey, like, I ran that program like this when I was at FIU in college. And she was like, can we talk? Right. So like, we've had like that friendship. And then it was like, hey, I have this app. And she's like, yeah, let's try this out. Right before the podcast, she walked in and she's sitting at her desk. This is like a month ago now. And I go, oh, hey, how was your day? And she goes, oh, it was good. It was good. It's like, yeah. She goes, yeah, I did the app and I did some New York and I hit a home run. And I was like, huh? What was that? And she was like, oh yeah, I did some T work, I did your app, and then I hit a home run. I was like, you hit a home run, like, off, there's so many devices out there. She goes, no, live at bat. I was like, live at bat? She goes, yeah. Like, you haven't? She goes, no, I haven't seen live pitching since like May or June of last year, of this year. Like, so you haven't seen live pitching in 3 or 4 months, and you hit a home run in your first at bat. She's like, yeah, I did. And the confidence that she had in that moment is such a success story for everything that I named, right? The ability of like building trust with somebody, knowing that I'm going to help them in something completely different. And then her being like, oh yeah, this will help me. Yes, let's do this. Mike, I don't see the inside pitch. I took an inside pitch to right field for a home run. I've never had that feeling of hitting a ball over a fence, but like seeing that in somebody, you're like, what are we doing here? that is the penultimate goal, right? And like, you don't have to know softball to be like, oh, hitting a home run is a great thing.
Right. I love that. So she uses it. Does the whole Duke softball team use it now or
So
no?
she's using it, and
Only
we'll
her.
leave it at that. Yeah,
Well,
and
it's
yeah,
her competitive advantage, right?
it is. And I think what's also true, right, is that like knowing what's right, right? Like trying to bring it to a whole team can almost be overwhelming, and like having one person do it, right? And she's had volleyball players use it. Like she's just had different people use it, and that's actually a really powerful thing in itself because that's somebody owning it. You know, like a lot of my individual athletes, they use it and they have their teammates use it. And you say, well, you need to go to the coach. It's like, do I? Like, if someone's using it and someone's doing it, that's a huge win. And again, that's kind of like that founder thing. And so many people want to say, like, you need to do this. Let's see what sticks.
I think, and then success breeds success. And so if they've seen their friend use it, then they're going to want to use it. Like most startups, I mean, we both have been in sales, we're both founders. It grows organically, right? Someone
It
believes
can.
in your product and then they're going to help advocate and sell your product for you to their friends or their team or who they know for you almost, right? Like the wins and the success stories is what sells. Let it grow organically. Don't go force it necessarily, right?
Yeah, and that's what's cool because that was not a success story I even had in mind, and that just again came to me, right? It was like,
Yeah.
oh, that was such a cool for me as a founder. That's such a cool feeling because you're like, oh, right, and like you don't know. Sometimes you don't get wins, and sometimes you don't get back to back wins, and that was like an absolute like, oh my gosh, what a cool moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Well, leaning in on the sports themes. So, Michael Jordan has this famous quote that says, everyone always talks about all of his wins, but no one talks about how many championships and losses and failures and mistakes it took him along the way, right? They only talk about how many championship rings the man had, right? And the GOAT in basketball, although he might not be the GOAT anymore. I guess maybe there might be other people now. But we all know that a home run doesn't happen without how many at bats where you had strikes or you got struck out or you got walked or you didn't get a hit, right? And so, same in business. So let's talk about the challenging part about business, the not fun part that a lot of people don't share, right? That no business is all success without the mistakes or the hard lessons that you had to learn during that growth journey. So, is there something that sticks and resonates
Oh
with
yeah,
you as that mistake or failure or opportunity to learn along your path that you're willing to share?
yeah, sure. So we talk about this right with Veer being like on year 3 with this, but like I've been doing this kind of stuff for 15 years. Right? So I was working with kids with learning disabilities and I started working with athletes. And I was like, wait, this school wants me to come work with their kids. Let me jump and do that. And I think the biggest thing when we look around all this stuff is imposter syndrome with this of like sticking it through. But like when the ground starts to feel unsteady, you're like, oh, let me just jump over there. And I think that is far and away the biggest one, which is just like, hey, like what if you hold your ground? Like what if you and this is what I've done a lot of the last couple of years, right? Is the work on myself, right? And the work to be like, you're good. Like you're here. Do your breath work, right? Do your meditations, do your yoga, right? Do any of the things that you need to do to be like you not only like belong, you matter, right? And I think that's like a really, really important thing. And that's something that I've been very vocal about. And it's still very real every day. Um, and I think that's kind of one of those things. I'm blessed to be able to work with athletes that I used to work with years ago when I left to work with Grit. We've kept that relationship and able to come back and work with them now. And I think that's such an important thing because this is the space to be in. This is a space I want to be in and want to make an impact in. And as well, just like being a founder, you can forget that, right? It could take one meeting, it could take one call, it could take one moment where you question it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important of like, oh, yeah, stay course.
Yeah, I think self-doubt is a real thing, right? For everyone and including a business owner. Like, am I growing fast enough? Am I selling enough product? Am I making enough of an impact? Am I changing enough lives? Am I doing what I set out to do? And I think, you're probably an entrepreneur like I am because you believe that you can achieve at a very high level. You have this like high expectation for yourself. And so is it ever good enough? And do you have like self-limiting beliefs, or are you confident that you're on the right track, that you're making?
Yeah, I mean, there's the concept of being an honor student, right? There was that kind of line of like, if it's not an A work, right? And we talk about this, you talk about this like hiring people, right? Where it's like I've had to learn to been like, man, Mike's really good at sales. Sure. And if I can hire somebody at 80% of that, we can go do other things.
Right. You
Right.
get to
And I
go focus on other stuff for the business and not be stuck doing the sales or the follow-up or the HubSpot or the marketing, right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things of like, hey, you paid somebody to do that thing. And that's one of the things we talk about with like the seed list, right? With those interns. Like I called Amanda, I was like, oh my God, we need this done for Duke football. And she's like, you have interns working on this. Let them do that stuff, right? And it was like, oh yeah, it doesn't need to be right so done so fast. It's like letting others kind of come in and trusting and knowing that. And what's incredible, they did things and implemented things that I would have never even thought about. And that is what's really cool about hiring talent, is that like they are now able to own that, and they could, I could build something, right, and do something. It could take me 4 hours, and it would, right, like it would look like like a hangman, a stick figure, right? Versus somebody else can do something in 30 minutes, and it will look incredible. And you're like, yeah, you know what? Let them. And it's not only hiring people; it's supporting them, right?
Yeah.
And like that is kind of a huge part in that. And then they know, right, that like you have my utmost support. So it's huge.
I think also the student interns like have new technology grasp, might do things with AI or things differently than you would be thinking of doing things. And they probably are more relatable to your student athlete audience too, right?
Oh, a
Um,
thousand.
and then they could have something to be building up their personal portfolio to help them land a job. Or that's a lot of companies hire from the internship programs. They're like, oh, this intern stood out, I had 5 and this one was my favorite, and when that person graduates, I am going to offer them a full-time role and create an opportunity for them to come join the team.
1,000%. Those are conversations I have, right? I mean, absolutely, right? The goal is like, hey, I want to find a space for you here. And that's really cool and really powerful. And again, without a program like that, you wouldn't know that existed.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to the word grit, and what does that mean to you as a student athlete, coach, performer, entrepreneur? Because we were talking about resiliency, but also grit at the beginning. So, what does grit mean to you?
Yeah, grit is persistence. Persistence is a quote and a word I learned at 18, of like really knowing of like when you're persistent, nothing else really matters. And that is the ability to push through. So when people are like, why would you go to that? What would you do here? Nothing's going to come from me. It's so easy to say no. And you'd be like, what if I said yes? Right? What if I went to that event? I know I'm a little tired. What if I went for 5 more minutes? All right, I'm at okay, 10 more. Okay, what if I just a little bit more? Right? And it's giving it that. It's really cool. I had Brad Shuck was a professor of mine at FIU in Miami, and he had a really cool thing of like, what's boiling point? Boiling point for water is 211 degrees. Cool. Or 212, sorry, 212, right? And he goes, well, what's 211? Just really hot water.
Yeah,
It's missing that little bit,
one
right?
degree.
And look, yeah, just what a massive difference that is, right? Changes the chemical, right? Changes everything. And that's huge. But also like grit is also like, I was selling an all-terrain wheelchair for adaptive athletes, for people who are Paralympians, right? Like people who are like, it doesn't matter their level of sport. I mean, we had people who like never was able to go on a trail at all, right? And that grit and their like ability to just push through no matter what, like waking up in chronic pain or not knowing what the next day will be like. And so like for me, I got to see that on a daily basis, and I was always telling stories about somebody overcoming a thing. And
Yeah,
it was more so of like, you can do the hard, again, to founders, right? You can do the hard things. That is grit, right? You are built to do the hard things. Do it.
yeah. I love that. Yeah, pushing through, doing the hard things, and taking what you think is impossible or a challenge and figuring it out, figuring out a way, right? The
100%.
coffee bean came to mind when you were talking about the boiling water. I don't know if you've read that book by John Gordon, but it's about boiling water does something different to a coffee bean versus an egg versus a carrot. The carrot gets soft in boiling water, the egg becomes hardened, but the
Correct.
coffee bean changes the actual water and creates it creates something different from the environment that it's in. To summarize it, I might have screwed it up a little bit, but it's a cool book. It's a cool book. It's an easy read.
Yeah, but I also like that, right? Because that's the concept of like, look at the impact. Like, I think that's what people don't talk about. And that's what I've learned a lot kind of in this return here, right? Is that like the impact is, right? And we talked about the ripple effect, right? But like ripple effect is huge because like you don't know. Like that's what's really cool, right? Is like you won't know the impact you actually have, right? Be Plant the seed, be the tree that you'll never take the shade from.
I love that. I love that. All right. So what's next? So we're going to talk a little bit about your future, right? So what is on the plan? How are you going to grow the rest of this year?
Oh yeah, that's the rest of this year, right? We got a couple months.
Like three,
Um,
we're heading into Q4 already. I can't believe it.
yeah, it'll be going to conferences. I think some of the biggest things now, the app's in a spot where individuals can download the Veer app from the Meta Horizon store in their headsets. That's what's really cool. And then like bringing it to teams. A couple different teams have headsets with them right now, doing 2-week demos because I was like, you need to use this. That's what's been really cool. I'm going to golf conferences, softball, volleyball, kind of going to different conferences. Again, having coaches and having athletes try it and use it, I think has been really cool. And again, small wins. I don't need to go to these things and sell out. That's not the goal. The goal is like 1% better. The goal is getting a handful of coaches to buy into this because, again, we're going to a blue ocean. What we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, right? Vision training for athletes, like the mental side of the game, like no, not many people are doing this. So, like, again, little wins. And like we talked about this before, there's going to be lots of strikeouts. And I love that. When I hire somebody for sales, we talk about like, do you hate to lose or do you love to win? And like when you're losing, you get to stack all of those and then get to go win a lot because you learned so much along the way.
I like that. And yeah, it's like you're learning during the losses. My daughter lost her soccer game this weekend pretty poorly. Like it was they lost by a lot. And we talked about like how did she learn as a goalie? What did she do differently? How did she perform? Because being the goalie, you feel all the pressure when the score ended up being 6-1, but also her team didn't score 5 other shots, right? They only scored one. And so there's the goalie's only half of the equation, but taking each loss as a lesson and an opportunity and a reflection of, well, what you did do well is when you were hot and overheated at the halftime, you decided that you were going to sit out and let the substitute goalie go in and you were going to play the field for the second half and not get to a point of, stress, overwhelm, overexhaustion, heat exhaustion, and let it all spiral because it tends to spiral with her. And we kind of talked through it. And I think that's the lesson and the opportunity in athletics is like, it's a loss, but how did you grow? What did you gain? What did you do differently? How can you be better? And what was the lesson learned?
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, the goal is that like we don't talk about this, right? But it is like the more often you lose, the better you'll actually get. Because like if they won 6-1, she's great, but like there are gaps in the game, right? There could be gaps in the defense, right? So cool. Like, and it's hard, right? As a goalie, if 6 goals went through, which obviously not all of them went to her, right? If she subbed out, but like, how do you not wear 6?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, the defender didn't do that. Doesn't matter, right? And again, especially at the age that we're talking about, none of those other things matter. The goals got scored on me,
Right. That's it. It's
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
and what you're building in her is that because that will be an incredible skill and you know learning that what I love to talk about with athletes, right, is learning that and then how to go across, right? Like one of my baseball players is like, Mike, I love baseball, I love it, and I cannot wait until I can just be super hyper focused on business someday.
I think 100%. I think there's so many parallels in being an athlete and also being an entrepreneur. And our sales, right? Like you and I both kind of started careers as sales. So athlete to sales to entrepreneurship, and the parallels and the similar attributes and strengths and the resiliency and the grit and the determination that you
And learning the
build
skills,
along the way.
right? And learning the skills, right? Learning how to cope with all of those things, right? Like the goal is that like not people, and especially like investors talk about this, right? But like investing in athletes and looking at athletes, right? Because they've gone through it. It's like they've gone through it and succeeded, right? Like that is the point, right? And like the point is like they've learned how to go through those, as well as like they know how to do a lot at once, right? So like from a startup standpoint, you're like, cool, they can figure it out. That's really cool.
And the determination and the commitment, I think, is the other key piece to it. All right. So do you want to end us with a quote? End us with a memorable moment. End us with some sort of motivation or quote.
Yeah, give me a second on that one.
Your favorite.
The problem is I've used so many quotes in here.
We'll pull something from it.
Yeah, give me a second. What is it? What's the quote? It's like, you are what you repeatedly do. Accidents, or I'll repeat this one second. You are what you repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Like, I think that's just like a really funny thing. And that's the concept of like stacking the days, right? Just like pushing through and getting through the next day because like great day happened yesterday. What happens tomorrow, right? Like what happens today, right? Like just that's such an important thing.
I love that too. Habits. I'm writing my little notes about all of the little nuggets of gold that you've dropped on this podcast.
I mean,
Thank you.
I mean, look, I appreciate it, right? I mean, a lot of it is like learned, right? I mean, everything we've done, all these quotes, all these things were like things and instances put through. Um, and I love it so much. So thank you, Kate. Yeah.
I love your passion and that you found a way to create a product, add value, serve an audience that you're passionate about, supporting student athletes. We're going to talk offline, I'm sure, about how I can get my daughter more involved with your product at Veer Coaching. Thank you for being open and honest and passionate and vulnerable and sharing your stories about being a resilient entrepreneur. This has been a joy and so much fun. I end with, now that you've been on my show, who do you recommend for me to interview next? Because you know that Chip Kennedy recommended you. So I'm putting you on the spot again, but do you know someone else that's a resilient entrepreneur that would be a good guest?
Yeah, so I really like Dana Spano, Entreprana. It's doing the mindfulness practice and things like that for founders.
I don't know.
So yeah, I actually obviously worked through a session with her right before this. So I think that's a really cool one. And people like to talk about like, Mike, you were great on stage. Like after doing a pitch, I was like, yeah, I do this app. So that's also a nice little plug for her. But yeah,
Perfect. Well, I would appreciate the intro and I would love to have her as a guest.
sounds
All right.
great.
Thank you all. Thank you.